The Giants look to pivot after losing Corbin Burns to the Arizona Diamondbacks, possibly looking at Pete Alonso. That and more next here at The Upside. And welcome into the MLB Hot Stove Daily here at the Upside Sports Network. My name is Michael. Appreciate you guys joining us later in the evening on a Saturday night. Appreciate you guys taking the time out. If you guys are new here, hit that like and subscribe. Trying to reach 2,100 subscribers by the end of the year. We're less than 40 away now. Let's see how close we can get. Welcome in Jonathan, Greg, Mark, Owen. Appreciate you guys joining us. We'll start with our number one story, of course, which begins with Corbin Burns. 6 years, $210 million to the Arizona Diamondbacks. What's next? Well, the San Francisco Giants were one of the teams that was thought to be one of the favorites to sign him. Ultimately, they miss out. Now they're going to have tons of money to spend both this offseason and next year. The thought process was, hey, Corbin Burns would be a great finishing piece this offseason. You have a great year to kind of build up for the free agency next year to go after Vladdy Guerrero Jr., Kyle Tucker, Bo Bichette, whoever you might value at that point, and then really go into free agency next year. But it seems they're not content with just getting their one piece that they brought in Willy Adames. They've turned their attention, according to multiple reports, to Pete Alonso. It tells me they are really trying to beef up this lineup, and while I like the power that Pete Alonso would bring to that Giants lineup, I wonder about the long-term viability of bringing in a guy like Pete Alonso. I don't necessarily have those same concerns with a team like the New York Mets, where they have all kinds of untapped resources with Steve Cohen as their owner. The Giants aren't exactly a cheap organization, but you look at their track record here. They haven't really brought in any big-name power bats to that lineup, so this would be the first of its kind outside of Willy Adames. They haven't really had a power bat in that lineup anywhere near Barry Bonds' level since Barry Bonds. And Pete Alonso, while he would be a significant upgrade on the power side of things, I wonder how he would fit on this roster in a year, 2 years, 4 years from now. And the market for Alonso, I think, is going to be around 5-6 years. It's just a matter of where he ultimately thinks he's going to fit best. I still think the Mets are the front runner here, but I find it very interesting that the Giants could be a team that might be a fit for Pete Alonso. Let us know in the comment section what you think about Alonso possibly joining the Giants, and let us know where you're watching from. Appreciate you guys joining us. Already got 30 of you guys with us, and we're only been live for 5 minutes. Thank you guys for being so responsive to our channel. It's been a great time getting to know every single one of you guys. And if you guys have a comment, a question, a trade idea, send it in the chat and we'll see if we can go over it. Jonathan first, Greg second. All right. You guys have some fun in the chat. I like that. D-backs Mike Hazen might be the best GM in baseball. I would say he's probably in the top 10. I wouldn't say top 2 or 3 at the moment. But he's done a nice job, tooling that organization as best he possibly can. I would say, Chris Young for the Rangers has to be up there. Cashman's been doing it for, 20, almost 30 years, it seems like, at this point. With the New York Yankees, he's got to be considered one of the best in the business. The Dodgers, Andrew Friedman has to be considered one of the best in the business. I'm not sure you consider him a GM at this point, but front office executive, I guess, is what you could call him. There's a lot of great executives in the game, and Hazen's certainly one of the better ones. You do have a good one out there in Arizona. Welcome in, Mark. Appreciate you joining us once again. Owen, I have a gut feeling Santander will come to Toronto. Honestly, at this point, they're going to have to overspend every other team to be able to get a free agent in there. They miss on Corbin Burns. It sounds like they're not even one of the top 2 finalists for Alex Bregman as well. And they're going to have to spend big in order to lure a guy like Anthony Santander. Meanwhile, a team like the Houston Astros is sitting there going, hey, this is a perfect fit for our team right now. Bring him in and take over the spot for Kyle Tucker, and then we just keep on trucking. That's the thought process there in Houston. We'll see if that comes to any fruition there. Vida, welcome back. Giants rotation is a mess. They need pitching. Would it have been better with Corbin Burns? Absolutely. Is it still a work in progress? Yes. Would I say it's an abject mess? No. You still have Logan Webb at the top. Robbie Ray, of course, coming off of injury last year. You're never really sure what you're going to get going into next year as well. You got some good young prospects that are coming, but you need more depth in that rotation. They've tried the one-year stopgap options year after year after year. Alex Wood, Ross Stripling, Carlos Rodon, Blake Snell, and several others that have come in and ultimately gone out the door already. Now they need to go out there and do it all over again. The thought process being that if you bring in Corbin Burns, you have him and Webb at the top of that rotation, and then you let the rest of the chips fall where they may. Now they're not spending on Corbin Burns. I imagine they'll still look to try to bring in at least one starting pitcher on a year or a 2-year contract and help beef up that starting rotation. So I'll agree that the rotation is a work in progress. Mess might be a little bit of an overstatement. Robert, Toronto needs to do something, or goodbye Vlad or Bo. Honestly, I think it's already ship sailed at this point. I'm sure that they can throw all the money they want to in front of Vlad and in front of Bo, but I just don't think either one of those two guys is going to sign an extension. I think they want to go to free agency, and once those guys get to free agency, they're going to look and say, hey, I go back to Toronto, I might be able to make a wild card at best. If I don't go back to Toronto, I'm still going to get very good money from one of the Mets, the Yankees, the Dodgers, any other team that might be in need of a first baseman or a shortstop or third baseman if you're looking at Bo Bichette, and still be able to get a very good contract and be able to compete, in a postseason spot. So we'll see. Giants shouldn't sign Alonso. Go all in on Vlad. Find out what he's told Toronto he wanted and trade for and give it to him. I'll agree with half of that. I agree that they shouldn't sign Alonso. I'll agree that they should go all in on Vlad. But as far as when is the bigger question, I would rather wait until he gets to free agency. Same thing with Kyle Tucker. I would rather wait till these guys get to free agency where it's only a compensation pick that you're giving up instead of whatever the trade return might be. You're still giving up the free agent dollars either way, but I'd rather give up that compensation pick rather than the prospects I already hand-selected and have grown within my organization in a trade for these guys. So I would wait until free agency. Robert, if Vlad hits free agency, Cohen's wallet is coming out, I would assume. I would agree there. Even if they bring back Alonso, I still think they would be in there for Vlad Guerrero Jr. Greg, watching from Nashville Twins fan. Well, speaking as a fellow Twins fan, we'll see what they do with the money on Correa, if they ultimately move him, if they trade away Pablo Lopez. But I'm not expecting anything big. Maybe even see a trade of Jose Miranda. One of our commenters, anyway, had a great idea of sending Jose Miranda to the New York Yankees as a budget fit for them at third base. Might be able to get a couple of decent prospects out of there, but the Twins look like a team that's ready to retool/rebuild. Not sure there's much left in the tank for what their prospect pool has left in it. And Buxton's, towards the end of his time there with the Twins at this point, injuries, inability to be able to be on the field consistently enough are an issue for me. Watching from Waterloo, welcome in, Mark. Appreciate you for joining us. Let us know where you guys are watching from. Hit that like and subscribe. See if we can see how close we can get to 2,100 subscribers by the end of this video. Mike, welcome in. I think Boras is using the Giants as leverage to drive Mets price up. Possibly, very possibly, but I still think that the Mets, have all kinds of Cohen money, period. I don't think Boras has to use any other team to really get the contract that he wants for his players. I think with other teams, he would have would have to kind of generate a market for him. But I think the Mets are very comfortable paying whatever the salary is to Alonso. Now, sure, you don't want to pay $10 for the same burger you could get for $5, but I think they realize the player is more important to that team to help lengthen out that lineup, give some depth, and give some lineup protection for Juan Soto. I don't think they're prepared to have Vientos at first base. Now, maybe they go a younger route. Maybe they go the Alex Bregman route, more athletic, more defensively versatile player. But I think that would be less likely than a Pete Alonso signing in general. Greg Chernoff of the Guardians is a top GM in my opinion. I was flabbergasted as Twins retained Baldelli only to watch future Hall of Famer Terry Francona to become available. Ouch. Yeah, but I don't think he was ever going to the Twins. But I will agree, Chernoff as the Guardians GM does a great job with that budget, being able to keep that team in contention in the AL Central. And who knows, maybe they have a year like the Cinderella story that the Diamondbacks had to get all the way to the World Series on the National League side just a year ago. Let's see here. Vida, if the Giants can trade for and sign him now, you do it. If they wait, they're competing with everyone else for his services. If he will take their money now, go get him. Yeah, but you can't exactly negotiate a contract before you make the trade. So one, you're giving up pieces, and two, when you make that trade, there's no guarantee he would agree to an extension. And just like Kyle Tucker, the reason why I wouldn't have traded for Kyle Tucker, he said he's going to free agency. He has zero interest in signing an extension. And while I think Vlad Guerrero is genuinely interested in looking at what an extension might be, I think it's purely for seeing what a contract could look like for him when he gets to free agency. I don't think there's any way he actually signs a deal, because when he hits free agency, his number's going to go up. And that's why, again, I would wait until free agency rather than giving up the few prospects that might still be promising in that Giants farm system. Jonathan from Northern Cali, appreciate you joining us. Greg, Miranda, a rare 12 consecutive hit guy. Yeah, that was incredible last year. Vincent, welcome in. I think it's the first time I've seen you chat. If you are new here, make sure you guys hit that like and subscribe. Watching from Medford, New Jersey. Let's go Mets. All right, we do have quite a few Mets fans in our chat from pretty much all walks of life all around the world. And if you guys are new here, we got 60 of you guys with us right now. If you're new here, hit that like and subscribe. Let's get into some of the other details of the day besides the Giants. One involves the Boston Red Sox and the trade of a possible first baseman in Tristan Casas. The way that this trade would work out is the Mariners would end up with Casas at first base and offload the contract of Yoshida. That gives 2 bats to the Seattle Mariners, while offloading the contract anyway of Yoshida in exchange for Luis Castillo. Now, this trade, the trade here isn't exactly just rumors mills, just talking about what might make sense between the two teams. It's that the two teams have actually discussed the trade itself. This is kind of interesting for me because the Red Sox, before they even brought in Walker Buehler, I thought, hey, they already brought in a couple of starters. They're done adding starting pitching. Then they add Walker Buehler. Again, I think, hey, they're done adding starting pitching. And now we get rumors about the Red Sox talking a trade, anyway, for another starting pitcher. The old adage of you can never have enough pitching, it couldn't be more accurate here with the Boston Red Sox. And while bringing in Luis Castillo would be a great boon for that rotation, really give them another strong arm at the top of that staff, I wonder if this would be a precursor or at least a follow-up move if they bring in Alex Bregman. Bregman, of course, is down to, in my opinion, the Red Sox and Tigers. Carlos Baerga has reports anyway that he believes he's going to the Tigers. I think the Red Sox are still a great fit. Yankees have at least kicked the tires on it. But I'd say the two teams that are most likely going to sign Bregman are the Boston Red Sox and Detroit Tigers. If you bring in Bregman, he plays at third base. You have to move Devers over to first. Casas is your first baseman. You offload him. You already have a really good outfield with Duran, Abreu, and probably Roman Anthony next year. There's not a spot on this roster for Yoshida. You trade those two pieces that are not necessarily going to be in your lineup every day for a top-level starting pitcher to come in there and be your number 2 in that Red Sox rotation. Love the trade idea, honestly, for both teams. Do I think that the Mariners could probably do a little bit better as far as not having to take back the contract of Yoshida? Possibly. But I think overall, getting two bats into that lineup when you're stuck with a $15 million payroll limitation by the ownership group there, this would be one creative way to solve this problem with the Seattle Mariners. For the Red Sox side of things, again, they're not spending big money to improve this lineup, but if they're making this move, that would tell me Bregman or some other piece would have to have come in order for this move to make sense. I wouldn't make this move right now if I'm the Red Sox. I would wait until I get an answer from Alex Bregman. Speaking of Bregman, what is his number going to look like? Well, early on in free agency, we looked at the markets for Willy Adames and Alex Bregman and said both players are very comparable, but Bregman would probably get the bigger salary, more playoff experience, better pedigree, been in 7 straight ALCSs. Ever since he's been in the big leagues, he's known nothing but postseason baseball. He's going to get a very good contract, and he's a player that has not hit his ceiling yet. A little bit more pop in that bat as well, in my opinion, than Willy Adames. So Willy Adames gets 7 for $182 from the Giants. Great deal, signs before Juan Soto. Bregman's waiting for the Soto market to finish. That gets finished off. You get all these trade targets coming through. The Kyle Tuckers, the Cody Bellingers of the world, those guys are off the market now. Now you've got the top starting pitcher, Corbin Burnes, signed. Now you're left with a clear number 1 free agent left on the board in Alex Bregman. The teams that are in there for him are clearly the Tigers and Red Sox. The longer this takes, maybe a mystery team jumps in here, like the Diamondbacks did for Corbin Burnes. We'll get into more updates on Burnes and how that ultimately went down as well a little bit later here. But I find it very interesting, how Bregman's free agency is going to go here. Does he go to the Tigers and have the connection with A.J. Hinch as the manager, and then they turn around and trade for Ryan Presley or sign Kirby Yates? Tigers then, I would imagine, are one of the top favorites to win the AL Central and would be a legitimate threat to win the World or to get to the World Series on the American League side. I think the American League is very open right now. I think the Tigers have a legitimate chance to get there if they can bring in Bregman and add to the back end of that bullpen. Looking at the Boston Red Sox, they're a very good young team. Bringing in an Alex Bregman would really solidify this team as a postseason contender, at least in my eyes. Bringing in somebody with that playoff pedigree would be exactly what this young team needs, and they still got more young talent coming with Marcelo Mayer and others. And this team looks like it's ready to compete for at least the division and possibly more. But they need to invest in free agent dollars to really kind of put the cherry on top of their offseason, like what they've done. But we'll see if they are able to bring in Bregman, and if they do they trade away Casas and Yoshida in the trade that was discussed with the Mariners for Luis Castillo? Let us know in the chat what you guys think of that trade between the Boston Red Sox and Seattle Mariners. What do you think about the trade? Do the Mariners get enough in return for Castillo? Do the Red Sox make the right move in pivoting off of Yoshida and Casas by bringing in Castillo? So let us know in the chat what you guys think. Let's catch up on a few of these comments. Greg, I have a lot in common with you, Vincent, as Twins owners and Mets are so similar. I would say the exact opposite. Twins are trying to save as much money. Mets are trying to win a World Series. I'll put it that way. Tom, welcome in. Cubs fan from Illinois. What is any Cubs news? Well, remember when they traded away Cody Bellinger? They basically retained $5 million of his salary. Good deal overall for the Cubs. They didn't have to retain more of that deal like the Yankees were originally hoping they would. Now, they were hoping to get the deal done with Jesus Luzardo and bring him in on the cheap as their number 5 starter. That never happened. Turns out the medicals were an issue for the Cubs as well, and so now they're going to have to spend those free agent dollars that they were going to allocate to a high leverage reliever, probably a closer, on a number 5 starter as well. My pick right now for them is to go after an Andrew Heaney type of a pitcher in that number 5 spot for that rotation. Then in the bullpen, they're looking at all kinds of closers. They're looking at Tanner Scott, looking at Kirby Yates, and then there's others as well. My pick is that they go to the trade market and bring in Ryan Helsley. That would then allow them to use their pocketbook anyway to add some more offense to this lineup, and that's how I see the 2025 Chicago Cubs taking the field on opening day. Now, they're all in for 2025. They brought in Kyle Tucker. They can't stop now and just sit there and say, well, we weren't able to get anything done. They made the move by going after Kyle Tucker, risk it all on one season with Kyle Tucker, and hope they can convince him to stay after the year. You got to show you can win in order to do that, and they have an uphill battle to climb in order to get there. So let us know in the comment section what you guys think the Cubs might do. You got my thoughts. Let's hear from you guys. Stanley, any news on Pete Alonso? Appreciate you joining us, Stanley. If you guys are new here, hit that like and subscribe. But Alonso has a new market anyway in the San Francisco Giants. It's not just media reports and fans hoping they might pivot to the next best, option on the free agent market that might help out this team. It's that the Giants themselves have reached out to Pete Alonso's camp and just to see what the market would really look like here. To me, I think this would be a little bit of a misstep for this organization from a roster building standpoint. I think Alonso's probably going to be a DH at some point in the next couple of years. At first base, I think their better option would be to go into free agency for Vladdy Guerrero Jr. After this upcoming season. I think that's the best way to go. But when you're looking at this roster, they've done a great job bringing in Willy Adames. There's still a chance they might add another starting pitcher, which I think they will. Just depends on how much money they're willing to spend as far as how effective that pitcher is going to be. There has been some conversation as for Doval being traded out of that bullpen. And for the Giants, if they bring in a power bat like Pete Alonso, it'd be a great thing for their lineup from an offensive perspective. He'd be the best power hitter they've had since Barry Bonds. So from that perspective, I would understand the move. But I think this is the wrong player for them to go for that type of a move with. I would rather wait and go after Vlad Guerrero Jr. in free agency, not via trade, because again, I don't think he's going to sign an extension even if you traded for him. So I would just wait until free agency and try to convince him with, hey, we brought in Willy Adames, showed we were able to win X number of games better. We got all this money we're going to spend in free agency. We got Buster Posey. We're more a stable franchise. We get the guys we shoot after. And, I'd say just, looking at your free agency pitch from before Buster Posey came in with all the failures under Farhan Zaidi till after Buster Posey came in, they bring in Willy Adames that, everybody thought they were the favorites for Corbin Burnes, including myself. They ultimately don't get that one done. They finish as a bridesmaid there. But I think that one's more about Corbin Burnes deciding he wanted to go elsewhere. The update I told you guys we had for Corbin Burnes, kind of what we mentioned at the very end of our live earlier today, Corbin Burnes reached out to the Arizona Diamondbacks, not the other way around, to ultimately end up there for 6 years, $210 million. Now, there were two contract offers that were higher value than that coming from the San Francisco Giants and the Toronto Blue Jays. We hear language right now around several reporters saying that there was franchise record-breaking contracts on the table for Corbin Burnes from the Baltimore Orioles, from the Toronto Blue Jays, from the San Francisco Giants. Here's the thing with those reports. He didn't sign them. Okay? He didn't agree to those contracts. So while it might have been a record-breaking deal for the Baltimore Orioles, remember their biggest deal before this one, 7 years, $161 to Chris Davis. Obviously that didn't work out. They're a smaller market team, payroll constraints to consider. Do you really think that it was a 6-year, $210 million offer on the table from the Orioles? I think not. And so for him to live in Scottsdale, Arizona, he wanted to play a little bit closer to home. Can't fault the guy, but just kind of take some of those reports with a grain of salt when you're looking at those issues. Welcome in, VPCZX. Appreciate you joining us once again. Mike, welcome back. Who do you think the Yankees get to fill second base, third base? I don't see DJ LeMahieu or Oswaldo Cabrera starting the season. Honestly, those guys are already on the roster, so I guess you'd have to give the asterisk that they're kind of the penciled-in favorite right now. Gleyber Torres will update on his market as well, but I still think they'll add somebody else to this team. I don't think there's a guy on the roster right now that's going to be their opening day third baseman. I think Jazz Chisholm probably flexes over to second base, whether that's going to be Bregman or Arenado or Jose Iglesias or Jose Miranda. Any one of these third basemen that have been mentioned remains to be seen. If I had to guess on it, I think the Yankees are going to go a little bit cheaper at third base. I don't think Bregman signs there. I think Arenado could be a possibility. They would have to figure out something with Stroman going somewhere else as well and get the Cardinals to bite down on some of that salary for Arenado. But I think he would be their preference as far as a player, but finances might keep him from doing so. David, it seems like the Giants have been looking for that power bat for a long time now. Yeah, you're darn right they have been. I mean, Willy Adames is the quote-unquote best power bat they've had since Barry Bonds. He's not exactly a quote-unquote power bat, though. He does hit some homers, but Pete Alonso is the quintessential power guy in the major leagues right now. Bringing him in would certainly help elevate that status for them. But to me, I would just wait one more year for Vladdy. Greg, what about Gleyber Torres signing with the Tigers? I heard bad reviews, but kind of like it due to his overall track record. Honestly, I like Gleyber Torres. He's a good competitor when it comes to the offensive side of things. Defensively, he's got a lot of Robinson Cano to his game. That I don't really love. But you can flex him around a little bit. Is he great defensively? No. But he can at least hold it down for an inning or two at a certain spot. Or if you have a guy injured, he can play at third. He can play at second. He came up as a shortstop. Is he an ideal, second baseman, an ideal shortstop, or an ideal third baseman? No, but he has the ability to play the position and at least get his bat in there. Now, Colt Keith is going to be flexed over to first base for the Tigers. Spencer Torkelson just hasn't been able to grasp it at the major league level offensively. So they're going to have Keith at first base. Looks like Torres is going to be your second baseman. Baez, of course, has been an eyesore since he signed with the Tigers. And there's still rumblings that Alex Bregman could go to Detroit as well. And then in the bullpen, you're looking at Kirby Yates possibly joining that team as well. So the one thing I wanted to get to on Gleyber Torres, though, before we get too far away from him, is that he signed a one-year, $15 million deal. Guess what? He never got an offer or really even discussed numbers with the New York Yankees. Not a huge shock when you look at how his tenure ended there. Defensive issues, the front office and the management staff and his coaches all asking him essentially to slide over to third base when they made the trade for Jazz Chisholm. Not a very good team guy for the New York Yankees. Got to think he's going to be more of a team guy this offseason, especially when he was considering being a second or third baseman, a position he refused to play last year for the Yankees with the Washington Nationals. That was part of the negotiations there. Ultimately, he lands on a one-year, $15 million deal with the Detroit Tigers. I'd imagine he's going to be their second baseman, and I'm guessing they're hoping to bring in Alex Bregman as well. Now, they still have Jace Young in their prospect pool as well. If they don't get Bregman, say the Red Sox win that one, I still like where the Tigers are no matter which way they go this offseason. I like the moves that they've made. Do I think they're over the top winning the World Series moves? No. But do I think they're at least competitive in a very winnable division in the Central? Absolutely. Let's go ahead and catch up on a few of these other comments anyway. VPCZX, Blue Jackets go for a touchdown again. Blue Jackets? Not familiar with who you're referring to on that one. Stanley, are the Mets making more moves? Yes, they are. They're still looking at Pete Alonso at first base. There are rumblings about Bregman possibly being a preference over Pete Alonso from a defensive versatility type of a play. There might also be, getting both of those guys in there as well. Remember the year they were trying to bring in Carlos Correa? He was kind of seen as the trump card for that offseason for the Mets. Ultimately, injuries kind of sunk that thing from happening. But, if they were able to get Bregman, I think that's kind of the same thought process here. Double down, triple down, quadruple down on adding to that offense. Now, that rotation is still not going to be the best once it gets to the postseason. But I like what they have. I think they have enough on the starting pitching side to be able to win in October. The question is, do they have enough bullpen, and do they need to bring in another guy to kind of give some lineup protection here to Juan Soto? I think yes on both of those is the answer there. Appreciate you guys joining us. If you guys are new here, hit that like and subscribe. Just crossing the 29-minute threshold. If you guys wouldn't mind helping us out and reach the 2,100 subscriber threshold before the end of the year, we're less than 30 away. So if you guys wouldn't mind helping us out, we'll see how close we can get by the end of this video. Frank, you heard that if the Mets don't get Alonso, they would turn to Bregman and move Vientos to first base. That's one thing that I've been hearing as well, that the Mets might be floating that one out there to kind of lower the price on Alonso. I still think Alonso ends up back with Mets, even with this talk about the Giants today. Let's go ahead and check out X and just see if anything is happening over there. Welcome back, St. Vintage. Mets still going for DH bats also. Yes, they've been connected with a few of them. They were connected to Teoscar Hernandez on a 2-year deal. All right, let's go ahead and update X here and just see if anything else is happening at the moment. Doesn't look like it. Head over to MLB trade rumors. Nothing there. More about Corbin Burns, etc., etc. Okay. One thing I wanted to get into was some trades with you guys and just kind of look at where trades could possibly happen. One trade idea that I've seen out there is for a lot of different relievers. Looking at Ryan Helsley. Looking at Ryan Presley from the Houston Astros. The relief market, I think, is going to get rolling this weekend. Been saying that for about 3 days now. I think there's enough interest in Kirby Yates that he could very well, sign any minute. It might take some time. Who knows at this point? But there is enough interest. One has to believe there's got to be traction. The numbers getting to the point where Kirby Yates is comfortable signing with the team if he can get the contract that he wants. But looking at what's out there on the trade market, I just want to look at some of the trade ideas you guys have been posting on this site and kind of look at them and see what might actually be worth talking about here. Let's see here. Frankie, they want Bregman regardless of Pete. I wouldn't say that's a no on that one, St. Vintage. I just think that Pete Alonso is going to end up back with the Mets. Whether that's has impact on Bregman, I don't believe so. I think Bregman's a talent unto himself, and if there's interest from Bregman to go to New York, then I think they should try to at least get that one done if I'm the Mets. I still think the Red Sox and Tigers, though, are the prohibitive favorites there. All right, here's one idea that I know, for the Giants fans that are in our chat, if you're looking to bring in Vladdy, here's what a trade could look like. Matos, Yastrzemski, and Birdsong in exchange for Vlad Guerrero Jr. Would you be willing to give up that in exchange for Vladdy? If I'm the Giants, that's not a bad deal. Uh, am I expecting to compete this year in 2025 for a wild card if I make this move? Maybe. I think this would get him close. I just don't think it's an overwhelming enough of a move to make the addition during this season, and you still may lose him for nothing in the offseason. So are you comfortable losing Matos and Birdsong, really, I guess, is the bigger question here. Yastrzemski, kind of the fill-in, everyday player for them at the major league level. Now, as a Giants fan, I would love to bring in Vladdy, period. I mean, getting that talent in there certainly would help out, but it might hurt them in the long run if they're unable to get a long-term deal done. The only way I'd really try to get this deal done is if I had some type of permission, to discuss things with Vladdy, just to gauge his interest in an extension and see what the numbers that they're looking at when they hit free agency. But for me, I don't necessarily love this trade if I'm a Giants fan. I don't necessarily love this trade if I'm a Blue Jays fan either, but at least it's better than losing him for nothing if he gets to free agency. Steven, as a Giants fan, easily, as long as we can re-sign him, long-term would be ideal. Again, I agree there. If you can guarantee that he signs long-term, I would have no issue with this move. But same thing with Kyle Tucker. There's no way to guarantee that until he signs on the dotted line. So it is a risk. It's a calculated risk, but it's still a risk all the same. And one that if I'm the Giants, that I don't need to take, especially when this move doesn't elevate them above the Dodgers, doesn't elevate them above the Mets, doesn't elevate them above the Phillies, doesn't elevate them above the Padres, doesn't elevate them above the Diamondbacks. For me, you'd still be in the fourth place spot in that division, and you're talking about missing the postseason even after acquiring Vlad Guerrero Jr. By making this trade and then not making the postseason, does that hurt your case to sign him in free agency even after making the trade? Might make your team more interesting this year, might make you more competitive, might make that closer race for the wild card even more competitive, but I don't think this pushes them over the top to get into the postseason, and that could be a detriment to them when they try to recruit him in free agency. Just celebrate the win that you've already got in Willy Adames. Look at it and say, hey, we were right there for Corbin Burnes. He just preferred somewhere else because he wanted to play closer to home. And just realize that you're no longer the Farhan Zaidi Giants. Now it's the Buster Posey Giants, and I would go after players that fit the long-term fabric of this team, and I think Guerrero does. I would just prefer to do it in free agency. There's nothing wrong with saying, you want to have Vlad Guerrero on your team. If you can guarantee that he's going to sign a long-term deal, I would love to make this trade, but I don't think there's any way he signs a long-term deal until he hits free agency. I'm praying for us to trade Yaz and Wade. Getting Vladdy would be massive and well worth it with Matos and Birdsong going. Well, I'll take your word for it. I just remember Matos having a higher trade value a couple of years ago. Maybe his value's dropped a little bit since the last time I really looked into him, but for me, I still would rather wait until free agency just because I would rather hold on to my assets, especially when this trade wouldn't push them over the top to compete for a wild card spot or win a wild card spot, or at least guarantee yourself a wild card spot. All right, appreciate you guys joining us. Got 100 of you guys in the chat. A lot of you guys are hitting that heart button. I really appreciate that. If you want to hit that like as well, I greatly appreciate that. Let us know where you're watching from. Got quite a few people with us. We're going to be live with you guys for a little bit longer, and then we'll have another live this evening going over some more trade possibilities as well. Let's look into some other trades that you guys have proposed. Here's one to the Philadelphia Phillies, Pablo Lopez, in exchange for Andrew Painter, possibly one of the greatest starting pitching prospects in the sport, in addition to Brian Rincon. Now, this is an interesting one. One idea that I've seen floated out there quite a bit is the Blue Jays, after missing on all these targets this offseason, if Correa gets moved by the Twins, maybe Pablo Lopez could be a fit there and kind of give them some long-term flexibility there with the Blue Jays there. So this trade here, I don't mind this one because this would be quote-unquote a shake-up type of a move that we've been looking for from the Phillies. Finances, though, are a thing, and I'm not sure this really works for them from a financial standpoint. I'm sure this would help out their rotation. This would firmly bump Taijuan Walker off of that rotation if it hasn't already with the acquisition of Luzardo. But you're losing the future of Painter. Dombrowski's never going to really worry about the prospects that he's giving up in a deal. So if I'm the Phillies, I kind of like the move. I just wonder if they'd be able to do it from a financial perspective. Twins, I love this move because you're getting a great piece back. I might want a couple of smaller pieces back in return as well, just to round out the package. Say, like a low A ball, 17-year-old guy, a couple of those type of prospects to really even out this trade. Maybe some money going back to the Phillies to kind of offset the money there if the money doesn't work for the Phillies. You look at the trade value here, 56 to 48. Not a bad deal in my opinion, though. I could see that one happening. Here's one here with the Red Sox getting Vlad Guerrero Jr. with sending out Abreu, Yoshida, and Arias. No, thank you. Honestly, on both sides. If I'm the Blue Jays, I don't want Yoshida. I would love Abreu, but that would basically be signaling the end for your ability to contend in 2025. That means you're probably losing your jobs if you're in the front office there. This move will not happen. That's also my issue with the trade that we saw earlier, is that I just don't see the Blue Jays making that move until at least the trade deadline. That front office is trying to save their jobs right now by trading their best player on that roster. Doesn't exactly bode well for their chances of getting to a wild card and at least competing to win a playoff series this coming postseason. So, for me, I just don't think the Blue Jays are going to move Vladdy until the trade deadline, and I think at that point, Abreu has too much value to the Red Sox to go after Vlad Guerrero Jr. Now, could they go with a smaller couple of prospects? Absolutely, but I don't think the Blue Jays have any interest in taking on the contract of Yoshida in that one as well. We have a lot of work to do, LL. One move at a time. Yes, you do, Steven. I'll agree there. The Giants have done a nice job getting things started with the addition of Willie Adames. I think next year you're going to add several key, aircraft carrier type players to that roster. This offseason, I think they try to add another starting pitcher to kind of give them some length in that rotation. Maybe a player along the lines of a Kyle Gibson on a one-year deal. Somebody who's at least going to give them some stability in that rotation might be a piece that could work there, or a Lance Lynn type of a pitcher as well. Let's look at another one here. Dodgers, Ryan Helsley in exchange for Alex Vesia, a major leaguer, and Edgardo Henriquez. Honestly, I don't like this deal if I'm the Cardinals. I don't think I'm getting back enough prospect-wise to make this deal worth it to me. For me, if I'm the Cardinals, I would rather go after, say, 2 or 3 prospects, out of the Dodgers system. Dodgers would get a great bullpen arm here. I'm not sure if he'd be the closer in LA, but he'd be a great late inning option, and I don't think they have any interest in trading Vesia just to replace him with another guy in Helsley. Now, they're going to have to consolidate some of their pieces at some point, so maybe they do have to include Vesia in this deal. But if I'm the Cardinals, I'd rather bring in younger players with more control than Vesia. Paranormal, welcome back. Welcome back. What just happened? Anything or just Corbin to the Diamondbacks? Just Corbin so far. We are getting some rumblings about the Giants in on Pete Alonso. We also got a trade update anyway about one that was discussed between the Mariners and Red Sox, featuring Yoshida and Casas going to the Mariners in exchange for Luis Castillo. Find it interesting that the Red Sox would once again be looking to acquire more starting pitching. Now, this trade, it sounds to me, again, with a big caveat here, like it would be acquiring Alex Bregman, and then you're trying to offload some pieces that don't fit in your everyday lineup at that point. But that'd be a great way to get that team into playoff positioning, and really some really good veterans on that roster to stabilize those young pieces that they have. Abreu just has 1 year at the major league level. You're going to have Mayer coming up probably in the next year or so. Roman Anthony's going to probably play the majority of the season at the major league level as well. Bringing in somebody with some playoff pedigree like a Bregman, like a Luis Castillo, who's been in the game long enough and knows how to pitch once he gets to October, I think those would be great things to help stabilize a very young team, a good young team. But now it's time for them to spend some money on it and see what they have with those young pieces. But Mark, just like you say there, the only official thing is Corbin Burnes, 6 years, $210 to the Diamondbacks. Check out a couple of more of these trade ideas here. Dylan Cease to the Orioles in exchange for Hurstad and McDermott. Honestly, this isn't a bad idea. They're going to have to give up some prospects at some point here. If they like Dylan Cease, which reports say that that's the guy they're really hoping to bring in via trade, as much as I'd rather them go after Castillo, honestly, this is not a bad trade idea for them. Only giving up 2 prospects, I think it does fit them, at least the mold of what they've done the last couple of years now. First with Jack Flaherty, now with Corbin Burnes, and then here with Dylan Cease. To me, though, I just wonder about the variance in performance with Dylan Cease. Has had a couple of really great years, but outside of that is normally above a 4 ERA pitcher. Reminds me a lot of the inconsistencies we saw around Blake Snell when he was younger with the Tampa Bay Rays. 1 year he'd be Cy Young caliber. The next he'd be mid at best, or have a 4.5 ERA. Dylan Cease, a very comparable pitcher, at least to me, to a young Blake Snell, except I think Cease goes a little bit deeper into games. Paranormal, nothing new on Yankees yet, and thanks. Nothing yet either on the Yankees. They're still looking to upgrade third base. They're still looking at bullpen. Updates anyway from the New York Yankees say that they are looking at Andrew Chafin in that seventh inning role. We talked about it last night as well, how some Yankee fans keep telling me in the chat how, Luke Weaver is their eighth inning guy, and I get it. He's a great option in their bullpen. But for me, I'd rather use Luke Weaver in a high leverage situation. For instance, if you're going to face the 1, 2, 3 in the Dodgers lineup in the seventh inning, that's when I would rather use Luke Weaver, but still have another great option in that eighth inning, and then Williams in the ninth. For me, you can never have too many great bullpen arms back there, and kind of building out that bullpen how they used to have it with Andrew Miller. Trying to remember how they had that bullpen all. Was it Aroldis Chapman, Andrew Miller, and David Robertson? 1, 2, 3 former closers all in that bullpen to kind of really leverage that bullpen out. Who was the other one? The guy from the Orioles. Zach Britton was another one. Building the bullpen that way is something I could really see the Yankees trying to do once again, building it up and making that a serious advantage once you get to the postseason. We saw the issues that they had in October last year, bullpen, starting pitching. Their lineup wasn't necessarily as deep. They've addressed all three of those, but one of the strengths of that team was having the dynamic performance of Juan Soto and Aaron Judge at the top of that lineup. They're missing half of that now with Juan Soto leaving to go to the crosstown rival Mets. Are the other improvements that they've made now to the bullpen, to the rotation, improving the lineup overall, are they good enough to win in October? In the 162 regular season, I think they'll be better overall. But once they get to October, do those pieces rise to the challenge or not? Welcome in, George. Appreciate you joining us once again. Got about 90 of you guys with us. Hit that like and subscribe if you are new here. We're getting closer and closer to hitting 2,100 subscribers by the end of the year. We were about 32 away when we started the video. Let's see how close we can get. George, Giants should look to trade Carson Whisenhunt and Taylor Rogers for Sandy Alcantara. This will help the Giants' rotation. Framber Valdez is not available, unfortunately. Not available yet. I think the numbers for Corbin Burns will affect Framber Valdez's case once he hits free agency as well. I think it's going to affect his extension talks, which could facilitate a trade as we get closer to spring training. But I still think it's within the realm of possibility that the Astros might be able to retain Framber Valdez. As for Sandy Alcantara, I know Anthony was asking and sending me links anyway, but I just never found the links. So I'll go ahead and see if I can address this. I did look up several different articles on the possibility of Sandy Alcantara trade. So just to update you guys, they are not necessarily looking to trade anybody. Same kind of canned talk you'd get from any GM. They're always open to possibilities. But the plan last year at the deadline was to trade many of their starting pitchers, including Sandy Alcantara, for as much prospect package as they could possibly get back, and just try to go about it and retool and rebuild. Just tear things down to the studs. Obviously, Alcantara got hurt. Luzardo and others just didn't perform up to snuff, and so they weren't really able to execute their plan at the deadline that they entered the season with. Now they're hoping to do it once again, which is why I thought it was interesting. They went ahead and moved Jesus Luzardo. I don't like the trade for the Phillies. I don't like the return that the Marlins got in return as well. I thought holding on to him, would have been a better case scenario here, even with the risk of Luzardo might be getting hurt again, especially when you consider he's only gotten one season over 100 innings pitched. But they go ahead and make the move anyway, just I guess to make sure they get some type of a return, getting the number 4 prospect out of the Phillies system. But for Alcantara, we're talking about an ace, a number 1 in pretty much everybody's staff, a Cy Young caliber pitcher every time he takes the mound. How he returns from injury will establish kind of where his price is at. Are we talking a massive prospect haul, or are we talking something a little bit more modest? For me, he's making, $17 million a year for the next couple of years with a team option, I believe, in 2027, keeping him on your roster for 2, maybe 3 seasons. He's going to get a massive trade haul if he can get back to that level of performance. Remains to be seen where a trade could ultimately materialize, but I think that trade could possibly happen at the trade deadline or in the offseason this next offseason as well. Appreciate you joining us, D-Rod. Welcome back once again. Good evening, Michael, everyone. Appreciate you joining us. Let's see here. D-Rod, if Castillo doesn't go to the O's, where do you think he goes, or does he stay in Seattle? I think he doesn't stay in Seattle. Honestly, they need to move him to be able to increase their financial flexibility. That being said, the fact that the Red Sox reached out and gave that package specifically of Casas and Yoshida tells me that Mariners are looking to improve offensively with major league pieces in return for Castillo rather than acquiring prospects as well. So for me, I think there's a legitimate chance he goes to the Red Sox. even with the additions they've made to that roster in that pitching staff, I think he'd be another finishing piece for them because this trade would ultimately mean that they brought in Alex Bregman. If they don't bring in Bregman, there's no way this trade happens with the Red Sox. With that being said, say Bregman goes to a different team and he goes to the Tigers. Then where does Luis Castillo go? For me, I still think the Orioles are the most logical fit. I think their preference is Dylan Cease, but if they're unable to get that one done, I think we could see him end up with the Baltimore Orioles. Another team that I'll mention here, the Cubs have kicked the tires on him. One other team that hasn't been mentioned as much and could kick the tires on this one is the Atlanta Braves. They're still looking for another starter. They're looking to use some depth pieces from within, at least right now. Charlie Morton's still sitting out there in free agency, but they're a little bit hamstrung with their finances. They're trying to keep their tax down a little bit, trying to dip back down underneath it. Bringing in Castillo certainly would add some salary. Got to think they'd try to offload a little bit of salary back in return going the other way, but I don't really see the position players that would go back the other way that would offset the salary for Castillo. So that might be a little bit less of a possibility. For me, though, I still think the Orioles are far and away the best option right now. We also mentioned, just in passing earlier in the video, about how the Giants had success getting a trade done with Robbie Ray. Maybe, again, they go back to the Giants here and offload some salary so that they can spend it on some hitters for that Mariners team. Welcome in, Willard. You think if the Astros would offer Jacob Melton and Cam Smith for Roberts Jr., I wouldn't do that if I'm Houston. I'd rather go in free agency for a Santander or a Profar rather than including Cam Smith, who they just acquired in that Kyle Tucker deal. I wouldn't do that. Plus, you think Framber for Sandy? No, that's not happening. 1 year of Alcantara in exchange for, 1 year of Valdez in exchange for Sandy Alcantara? Never going to happen. Ken, welcome in. Welcome in. Fire David Stearns. Stearns is malpractice. Sorry, the only one that I've ever seen do complete organizational malpractice is Perry Manassian for the Los Angeles Angels, and that's from the owner kind of stipulating how they would ultimately handle Shohei Ohtani's exit. Nobody's handled things probably worse ever in Major League Baseball history than the way that was done by the Los Angeles Angels. Now, as far as David Stearns, they do need to improve that rotation. To me, they did a great thing bringing in Juan Soto. Stearns has done great things with small budgets in the past. Now he's got to learn to play in the big boy pool, be able to play with that big boy money. And so far he's done a great job. He's got more work to do, though, and we'll see how this offseason ultimately shakes up. I would give Stearns at least one more year just to see how this offseason ultimately finishes out. If they bring in Alonso or Bregman, how they ultimately build out the rest of their bullpen, and then entering next offseason, what pieces do they ultimately target? Vlad Guerrero Jr., what other starters do they look at as well? Those are all things I'm going to judge the Mets on over the next 365 days. Now, say they get to the trade deadline at 2026, and they still haven't been able to win a World Series. They're still struggling to get over and compete with top-level competition like the Dodgers. Then I would have some worries, especially with that rotation, if they haven't made upgrades by that point. Then we could talk about Stearns and what his his ability to perform his job in New York has turned into. But I think it's still too early at this point. He's done great things with some of the pitchers he's brought in. Got great performances out of guys like Jose Quintana, who many thought his career was over. He legitimately was able to provide some good innings for that Mets team. Same thing with Luis Severino. Took a chance on him. Relied on that Mendoza connection. And then who's the other pitcher I'm thinking of? Sean Manaea. Got him to actually get to be the Sean Manaea we thought he could be. Changed the arm slot. Now he's looking like a pseudo-ace, a number 2 type of starter. And I like the 1-2 that they have, but they need more pitching there, more top-end talent. That's why there were some fans that were clamoring for a Corbin Burns. I don't think they were necessarily that in on his market, but a player like that I think would really go a long way to legitimizing that rotation against teams like the Phillies or Dodgers, teams that have a superior rotation that they're going to have to rely on their offense to be able to make up the difference for in that rotation. All right. Ben, the Jays are done. A rebuild sounds better than trying in 2025. Honestly, I agree with you, Ben. I think it's just strictly them trying to save their jobs at this point, and that's just a sad thing to see because this is not the right way, not the right thing to do for the long-term future of the Jays. For me, if I was the ownership group there, I would have fired the entire front office before they even got to this point. I wouldn't let them take my franchise and just set it into the gutter. But it sounds like ownership is wanting them to try to push things forward and try to win. But at a certain point, if you're the front office there, you're Ross Adkins, you have to look at your owner and say, hey man, we don't have the pieces. Even if we acquire the pieces in free agency, we still might not get there, and it's going to set our organization back. You got to understand that, owner. Even if you're willing to fire me right now by not trying to push all the chips in for 2025, I'm telling you, we're not going to be able to do so. And so, being firm with your owner, like Perry Manassian should have been with Artie Moreno, is the better way to go. And honestly, I think it'd be better for him to try to find another job elsewhere because he would show that he's looking at things for a long-term scope. He's not just selling out for one season. Now, would it work for an owner that's trying to win in 2025, 2026 only? Probably not. But most owners see the long game in Major League Baseball. Most teams are not bought and sold every single year. Most teams are in it for the 20, 30-year value of their team, their franchise growing. Most of them are fans of their teams as well to some degree, and they want what's best for the long-term product of their organization. And so I just would have rather fired Ross Adkins and the entire front office before you got to this point and try to bring in pieces that would utilize the roster that they have, trade away Vlad Guerrero Jr. this offseason, get what you can for him, and just try to keep that rebuild and retooling session here for the Blue Jays to a minimum. Say instead of going to a 3 to 5 year rebuild, maybe it's a quick 1 to 2 year rebuild instead of that full, long, drawn out thing. But we'll see what ultimately happens here. Let's catch up on a few of your comments here. If you guys are new, hit that like and subscribe. Appreciate those of you who have sent a super chat. Got a few of them earlier today. If you guys want to support the channel, we would greatly appreciate it. Goes a long way, and we appreciate the support. Alrighty, Stearns quantity over quality. He's a small market, period. I wouldn't say that entirely. I mean, he did just sign the biggest contract ever in professional sports history. Give the man a chance. I mean, in a down year, a year in which they were not expected to contend, he got that team along with the management group or the manager and everything else there in place all the way to the NLCS in a year where they were not expected to win. Now it's going to happen with that raised expectation, bringing in the biggest free agent of the offseason in Juan Soto. That's going to raise all ships there. A lot of attention is going to be on David Stearns. We'll see how it works out. But I get your point here. Stearns taking long shots and hit. He doesn't go for top talent, even though Cohen has all the money in the world. I would agree there. He needs to take a risk on top-end talent like Corbin Burns, but he just did so with Juan Soto, and he's still got many other guys with top contracts on that roster, and he's still got a pretty good contract here, or pretty good amount of money that he can spend with Steve Cohen as his owner. And they still may bring in Bregman, they still may bring in Alonso, they still may bring in an eighth inning guy. But I'll agree with you, the rotation does look a little bit sparse compared to the Phillies or the Dodgers. Willard, by the way, people forget David Stearns was part of the legendary front office that drafted the Astros' run to 7 straight ALCS, so I won't lose faith in him, but he had a tag team partner in Jeff. Well, I'll agree with that one. Former general manager who was blacklisted by MLB, yes, and rightly so for his lack of oversight on the team at that time. Jimmy, welcome in. Philly superior rotation don't mean anything. Dodgers just won World Series with a bunch of number 3 starters available during their postseason push. Mets can do the same with this offense. Need one more bat. Now, I will say the Dodgers really down to 3 starters and bullpen after that. Jack Flaherty isn't necessarily an ace, but he pitched like a number 2, I guess you could say, at times last year. And I would still say that Dodgers team was prolific. All the talent that they have there, and they only have added more talent and more offense and more pitching, and they're going to add more to that bullpen. I like where the Dodgers are at, but for the Phillies, I like their rotation. I like their lineup. It's just that lineup didn't produce when it came to October. That's the bigger issue there. That's why we all thought Dave Dombrowski wouldn't sit idly by after 2 years of falling flat on their face once they get to October, that they would shake it up and see what they could do. They don't do that, and ultimately have spent their money now on Luzardo and Kepler. We'll see if they can get a better year out of Trey Turner, better year out of Castellanos. You got to hope for the best if you're a Phillies fan, but I would still say the Mets have passed them by. Ken, why have they not signed Iglesias, second MVP for the Mets behind Lindor? I think they're still looking at bigger things offensively right now. I think they're looking at Pete Alonso, trying to get a resolution there. And just like the Yankees, who've gone about things all methodically this offseason, the Mets have done a very similar thing. Yankees went from Soto, they miss on him, they bring in Fried, then they bring in Williams. They go after Tucker, they miss, they go after Bellinger. They bring in Goldschmidt, now they're going after a third baseman. For the Mets, Soto was their top priority, they get that one done. They bring in a couple of starters, Frankie Montas and Griffin Canning at the back end of that rotation. Now they brought in Sean Manaea. They still have some outstanding free agents of their own that they're looking to bring back. We'll see who they ultimately bring in. George, Boris is going to use the Giants again to get the Mets to raise the proffer to Alonso. Makes no sense for the Giants to go after Alonso when Bryce Eldridge waiting in the wings signed Santander to play outfield DH. Honestly, I wouldn't mind that acquisition of Santander for the Giants. I think that'd be a good get for them. Their outfield has struggled to have consistent performances out there. But I do agree with your point on Alonso, though. I think a better fit would be going after Guerrero next year, and they do have Eldridge waiting in the wings. So that's why I keep floating the idea of a one-year guy at first base for them, like a Goldschmidt before he signed with the Yankees. Now I'm saying guys like Rizzo, guys who are going to sign a one-year deal this offseason, would be a good fit there. I don't necessarily like the idea of committing long-term money to a guy who's going to be a DH only in a couple years to a ascending quote-unquote team with the Giants. But we'll see what they do. That was Cohen, sir. You think Cohen is the one who got Soto, not Stearns? Stearns wouldn't even touch Soto. Well, I mean, if he was with the Brewers, true. But I mean, Stearns Stearns is still the guy that has to get the contract done on paper. Cohen might give up on money, and he might be the one pushing Stearns to do it, but Stearns is still the guy that has to get the job done, and he did. So we'll see. I know you're really hard on Stearns here, and I get the reasons why. But all I'm saying is realize that you've had him for what, 2 years now, year and a half. I can't remember how long he's been there with the Mets, but look at the track record that he has. He got out of a bad situation with the Mets with Verlander and Scherzer, or was that the year prior? Anyway, I can't remember. But then the year they're not expected to compete, he gets all those lower cost contracts, the hits that you're referring to, those high risk, high reward contracts. They work out. They get to the NLCS against the favorite in the National League against the Dodgers, and they just come up a little bit short. Now they bring in the top free agent of the offseason in Juan Soto. You think that's Cohen's credit? I'll say it's going to be a little bit of both. But I like both, or I like the idea that, or I kind of believe both guys are kind of in this for Soto here, because you can't have Cohen's money and not have a good GM be able to get the deal done and sell the free agent on the team that you're building. You have to have both, and Stearns is a great GM. I just think that you need to give him a little bit more time. Let's see here. Real Muto on the way down. I do agree there. He's on the backside of his career at this point. Stanley, Mets have prospects to trade for veteran pitching. That's an issue I have with the Mets. I would not trade for pitching. I would use the pocketbook of Steve Cohen first, second, third, and fourth and hold on to the prospects. Reason being is because you have the ability with that pocketbook to do with whatever you want in free agency. You don't need to trade for anything. Now, there's not necessarily a free agent starter on the level of Burns, so I guess if you're trying to add a frontline starting pitcher on number one, a Garrett Cole level starter, then you'd have to do it by trade at this point. But I don't see the impetus or the reason for it. I just don't see it. I mean, they have a good team already. Don't sacrifice the good in a quest just for a name at the front of your rotation, I guess is the best way to put it. I think they're in a good spot, and they have the ability to go out there and add more pitching next offseason as well, or even at the trade deadline. We don't even know who might be available at the deadline. Maybe Pablo Lopez's name finally comes out there in more earnest around the trade deadline. I think the Mets would be one of the first in line to try to bring him in, or Sandy Alcantara as well. Let's see here. Willard, it's upside, my friend. People call Dodgers a dynasty when they go to 7 straight ALCS and won 5 World Series, and those 7 ALCS trips and win 2 of those 5 World Series, then call them a true dynasty. Yes, the Astros have a quote-unquote dynasty. Are they, a team that's won back-to-back World Series? We haven't really seen that in a very long time. Obviously not, but they're still one of the best teams of the 2010s. Are they still one of the best teams in the majors? I'd say they're probably one of the top 10. Are they the best in all of baseball anymore? No. Let's see here. Jay, welcome in. Yes, we have the prospects, but I wouldn't trade any of our top 10 prospects. Their future is bright. I agree there. Use the pocketbook of Cohen. Willard, because Houston didn't need a superstar DH like the Dodgers. We already have one in Jordan, which, no disrespect, but the current general manager of the Dodgers was an idiot for giving up Alvarez. Alvarez wasn't Alvarez at the time with the Dodgers. So let's kind of take that with a grain of salt. Nobody thought he was going to be this level of hitter. They looked at him as a limited fielder, a DH, first base only type player with the long-term outlook for him, and players like that are not valued in today's game. Now, Alvarez is probably one of the top 3 to 5 hitters in all of baseball. Nobody saw that really happening for him. They always knew his bat would play. They just didn't know it played this well. So let's not be too hard on the Dodgers and their giving up of Alvarez. They've done a great job retaining the talent from within already, and still have a very good farm system, and the roster on the major league level is the proof in the pudding that they've been able to do both. Have their cake and eat it too, have a great major league team, and maintain a consistent stream of great young prospects from within. David Stearns came last offseason. Thank you. Appreciate that. Willer, Josh Field, super trade in MLB history next to Jeff Bagwell trade between Red Sox and Astros. I don't think that one's the worst. I think one of the worst we've seen, most lopsided anyway, is Mark Teixeira going to the Atlanta Braves in exchange for 4 pieces that ultimately were the building blocks of the Rangers that got them to a World Series in around 09, 11. But that was one of the most lopsided trades as well. There's a few out there that we've seen in years past. So let us know in the chat. You kind of spark an interesting note there. What are some of the most lopsided trades you guys have ever seen in baseball history? And I want you guys to take out the last 5 years. Nothing from modern baseball. I want things from 5 years plus. What are some of the most lopsided trades you guys can remember? Ken, yes, I'm very disappointed with Stearns. Aside from Quintana, Minaya, who were proven, getting these minor league pitching guys is not good. They also got Severino. He pitched up to a higher level than what he had in the past. They were still able to get Senga to pitch well for them. I think that was the year before Stearns got there, though. But they got Minaya to be the player that he is now. Minaya was not this level of player, when they brought him in. They've really done a nice job of bringing him up as well. I'm not mad at Stearns. We ran through the Phillies and beat the Dodgers 2 games. It's Uncle Stevie. Believe me, I wanted shiny things. He's going to get it. Well, I will agree there. Cohen's going to push for those shiny objects. That's where you get Juan Soto and company. Welcome in, Mike. Mike McAvoy, appreciate you joining us. The Mets are not that good. They are decent. They are that good, my friend. I think they're the second best team in the National League. Look at their lineup and where they're still going to add pieces. Now, I get the pushback some of you guys have been giving me in the chat after I get off the air. You mentioned things like, well, before they brought in Naya, their rotation was still a big question mark. And it still is to some point. I would say the Phillies and Dodgers both have a better rotation, and now the Diamondbacks. But the Mets have enough in that rotation to where they should be able to weather enough to allow their offense to take over. And I still think they're going to bring in a first baseman or a DH, something to help out that offense. They're going to add a bullpen piece. When all the pieces are done, when everything is settled, all the free agents are signed, the Mets are going to be better than the Phillies. Why? Because the Phillies are basically stuck with the roster they got. We thought they were going to shake things up. They're going to have to rely with their internal improvements rather than shaking up this roster. They have a huge evaluation on Alec Boehm. Doesn't look like they're going to move him before the season, even though things look really sour between the team and player. But we'll see. VPCZX anyway. Any Blue Jays updates? Blue Jays are pivoting to kind of that next tier free agency right now, and no real updates as far as who they might be targeting more than others. For Gosi, okay, let's see here. I want Acuna at second and not Vientos, and you're not moving Vientos off a third. Honestly, I would probably move Vientos probably to DH. I'd bring in somebody for third base in an ideal world for, say like an Alex Bregman or Carlos Correa level player, putting Alonso over there at first base, at least this year. See if I can get somebody to take on Marte and then bring in an outfielder. I think would be the way to, if you really wanted to spend the rest of this offseason and just make this offense as potent as you possibly could, that would be the way you'd go. But eventually, you're going to have a spot for Acuna, Jet Williams, and others. I like the speed of Acuna. He's tearing up winter ball, if I remember correctly. We'll see. Jay, I would love to see us have a serious DH finally. I like Winter on our bench, but a power hitting speedy guy. Maybe Speedy. Okay. I do agree they'll go after a DH. Who they go after remains to be seen. Anthony Manzano, Adrian Gonzalez. Okay. Not sure of the comment there, Anthony, or the context of it anyway. The Piazza trade, the Adrian Gonzalez trade. Okay. That one was pretty lopsided. The Rangers kind of got hosed in that one. Padres did better on that side. And then you look at the Red Sox to the Dodgers. Dodgers kind of built their current iteration of their team off of the trade that they were able to make with the Red Sox. Kind of taking the MLB ready players from the Red Sox to save them some money. The Crawfords, the Gonzalez of that group, and kind of started this whole run for basically the last 15 years now for the Dodgers. And they kind of bailed out the Red Sox of that situation. That was basically the beginning of the end for the Red Sox as well, because 4 years later, they're getting rid of Betts. 4 more years later, they're getting rid of Bogarts and others. And that was kind of the beginning of the end of them spending big money on players like that in free agency, to where they would go more of the Rays and A's way that they were always hoping to go down. But the Piazza trade, my friend, best fleecing ever. I'd agree. That one's right up there. Gary Carter, that was the one I was thinking of. Matt Fitzgerald, Herm Winningham, and Floyd Yeomans in 1985. That's up there. Let's see here. Brad, he was missing piece for the 1986 World Series Mets. I'll agree there. Okay. Ken, Alvarez should be much improved. Behind the plate, yes, I do like Alvarez behind the plate. By the way, Upside, you show no disrespect, but the Jason from Avenue said that former third baseman for the Yankees, Scott, was better than Ken Caminiti at third in the 90s, so I asked him. Let's see if I can catch these comments here. Avenue said that former third baseman for Yankees, Scott, was better than Ken Caminiti at third in the 90s. Okay, I don't understand the comment anyway. Arif, welcome in. Appreciate you joining us. Joe Carter, Roberto Alomar trade for Fred McGriff and Devon White. That's one of the biggest trades we've ever seen in baseball history, honestly. That Joe Carter, Roberto Alomar stack, that's kind of tough to beat, honestly. But McGriff was a very good player, Hall of Famer. When the Mets traded Tom Seaver to the Reds, I kind of agree on that one as well. I think there's better ones than that one. Greg, Rod Carew for Brad. Worst trade ever. Who trades a 32-year-old 7-time batting title? Calvin was cheaper than... Rod Carew was one of the best. I will agree there. Jay, we are the second best and eventually the best. Let's see what Acuna Jr. becomes, as well as Sprout may come up, maybe Jet. I will agree, Acuna and Jet look like really good pieces for that Mets organization for years going forward. Who is the best third base defensive arms in MLB? Brooks Robertson, Ken Caminiti, Mike Schmidt. But he said the former third baseman for the Yankees, Scott, was better than Ken Caminiti. I don't know. For me, Brooks Robertson is considered as probably the best, along with Mike Schmidt. Those are probably the best two third basemen in baseball history, in my opinion. Roy Halladay to the Phillies, that's a good one. I remember that one. Astros trading Ken Caminiti, Stephen Finley, and Cedeno. Makes some sense. I wouldn't put that in my top 50, but I'd say it's a little bit of a fleecing. Let's see here. Gary Carter, yes, that's up there. Winker, our Alvarez may hit 30 if he locks in. Alvarez, I think, is probably one of your best options right now on that roster. I really like what he brings you behind the plate. Offensive catchers are rare in this game. So, for instance, Houston has a real advantage there with Diaz. Orioles have one with Rutschman, and the Mets have one with Alvarez. Let's see here. The one trade that hurt most was Delino to Shields for Pedro. That's a tough one. I'll agree there. In 2022, the practically good relief pitcher, don't recall the name for the potentially good reliever for Daniel Vogelbach. I wouldn't put that one on that same class. Let's see here. George, it was McGriff and Tony Fernandez in the trade to the Padres, not Devon White. Yeah, I remember that one there with McGriff. The one thing with McGriff that I'll always remember about his playing career, kind of off topic here, was that season that he really carried the Atlanta Braves. That was the strike-shortened year, if I remember correctly. I think if they had not had the strike that year, we probably would have been looking at Fred McGriff being one of the first guys elected into the Hall of Fame off of the ballot, instead of having to go through committee. He was a Hall of Fame player in his heyday and should have been recognized as such. Verlander trade to Houston. That really did kind of spark things for Houston, give them some legitimacy, and settle down Garrett Kroll as a starter. He really came in there and kind of settled things down for them. Michael Young to Texas in exchange for Esteban Loaiza. I would agree there. Not necessarily one of the best in all of baseball, but one of the best in Rangers history anyway. Just look up the legal issues Loaiza ended up having. Definitely not. He's talking about Scott Brocious. Okay, now I understand what you're talking about. I remember Scott Brocious. That was the 90s Yankees. One of the more underrated players. He was very good in the postseason. Durable as well. Houston gave him the worst contract in history, most underrated player, McGriff. I would agree there. Teams kind of overlooked the impact that he had, and for far too long he sat, outside of the Hall of Fame, and finally got his due. Brad, Keith Hernandez traded by the Cardinals to the Reds in exchange for Neil Allen and Rick Ownby. I'll agree there. Alrighty. Appreciate you guys joining us tonight. We'll be live here in about a couple of hours. Take a little bit of a break. We'll delve deeper into some of the headlines that are breaking tonight. Hopefully, we'll have some activity, but we'll go over some of your trade possibilities. So when you guys join us later tonight, go ahead and think about what trades you would like to see your team make. With these rosters kind of filling up, you're going to have to make some trades to clear some roster flexibility. What trades would you ultimately make to improve your roster? For instance, Texas, I would like to see them go in the trade market for a relief pitcher like a Ryan Helsley or a Ryan Presley. No way Houston's going to get Presley, but that type of a pitcher is what I'd be looking for right now on the trade market. Let us know in the chat what you guys think, and we'll see you guys a little bit later this evening. Thank you guys for joining us. Let's check out just these last few comments here. Hernandez to Toronto from Oakland in '93. Varsho traded from Arizona in exchange for Moreno. That is one of the more recent ones. I'll agree that one was a bit of a fleecing there by the Arizona Diamondbacks. Part of why Hazen, one of the first comments of this live, Hazen, one of the best GMs in baseball. That's one of the reasons why right there. Fred McGriff, one of the most underrated players. Couldn't agree more. All right. Thank you guys for joining us. We'll see you guys here in a couple of hours. Y'all have a good one. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year, everybody.